Here we are. We're back. It's AWS Howdy Partner. We haven't had an episode in a while, right? How long has it been, Tess?
I guess I was the last one, right? So it's been about a week and a half, right? Since we had Chaos Search on. The return of the Chaos Search.
It has been a Taz-filled time in our lives, hasn't it?
Yeah, for good or for bad, that's what we've gotten. But fortunately, to balance out today, though, we brought in a great guest. We're joined by Nikki Hames. So Nikki, she comes from a company called Pariveda Solutions, and what's super interesting about this is up until this point, all of the partners on the show have been from ISV technology partners. Nikki, on the other hand, she actually comes from a consulting firm. And so, they solve a little bit different problems. And what we're going to be talking about a lot today is careers in technology, things like certification. And also, as a consultant, Nikki comes up against, complex problems on a daily basis. And oftentimes it's, you have to make decisions quickly and understand her customers' needs before making a decision. And so it'll be a really good time to understand how she and Pariveda as a whole deal with the complexity of consulting. And so, Nikki, do you want to just, I kind of introduced you, but do you want to just say hi to the crowds of people?
Of course. Hello, everyone. As Taz mentioned, I work at Pariveda Solution, and we're a consulting firm that's based in Dallas, but we have offices all over the U.S. And I think we actually just opened our Toronto office, so we are now all across North America. But just as Taz mentioned, we go into clients and we help them solve problems. So we're involved in a lot of different spaces, not just in custom app solutions, but in product, in CI/CD and infrastructure, AI, ML, and analytics, so kind of the full gamut. Pariveda Solutions, the company, really focuses on adaptable and versatile people and growing individuals. So we're cross-trained across multiple different areas and are able to adapt to be able to solve the unique problems that different enterprises have. So within the organization, I am a technical consulting manager. So I usually go in and I manage a team to help deliver a solution. And I usually play in some sort of architecture space as well. My last few roles have been focusing in the cloud, and I've been in kind of the AWS space the last few years. And I have a pretty interesting journey too of how I got into that space through Pariveda. So I'd love to get into that as well. I know it sounds like many people are interested in kind of the certification journey and what that could look like potentially and what's possible around that.
For sure, yeah. A lot of the viewers, yeah. Well, I mean, we have a whole range of people who like to jump on Twitch, but a lot of people are, college, trying to figure out like how to get into this big old tech industry that we're all working in. And so that, yeah, absolutely. Could you actually, I am kind of curious. So like, what was your background, Nikki, and like, how did you find yourself working at a tech consulting firm? I'd assume most people, they come from either like a computer science or maybe information technology, something like that, information systems major. Was that how you started off?
Oh, great question. And I know you know the answer to this.
So to be clear, to break the fourth wall on this, Nikki and I go way back. So yeah, I do know the answer, but yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So I do not come from a traditional kind of path of going through computer science in school and going that route. I went to Hope College up in the middle of Michigan. And I actually majored in psychology and women's and gender studies. And my last year at Hope, I was like, well, I have some extra time. Like, may as well do some computer science. At that point, I had been working in one of the psychology labs and doing a lot of the data analysis. So I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, let's get more into this. So got a minor real quick in my last year at Hope and started to explore jobs and what that could look like. And somehow Pariveda hired me. I think it's a testament to like the hiring practices at Pariveda focus more on ability to solve problems than, oh, you know how to write this out in Python, or you know how to create a website on the fly or answer this coding question. Because even when I first joined, like maybe my exact coding knowledge wasn't, the same as everyone else who had a major in computer science and had been doing it for a lot longer. But I had a very strong foundational knowledge of just how to think through problems and work through them. And a lot of consulting too is just navigating just the people aspect of it. But throughout the years, I've been with Pariveda for about 5 years now, actually 5 years in August. Very excited about that. And I've learned so much, and all of that has been in the last few years with AWS. I didn't really know anything about AWS until a few years ago, and I started my cert journey.
So if I'm hearing correctly, you're saying that like to get started in technology, you do not have to be an immediate master in one language?
That is 100% correct. I feel like at the end of the day, you have to be able to think critically about a problem. And it's like the rest of it is just syntax. You can usually transfer that between languages, whatever you're working in, but being able to diagnose, break down, note your assumptions, and be able to deliver on that, I feel like at the end of the day is the most important thing. So people that are looking to transition into other industries, I know I get people that reach out to me sometimes, like on LinkedIn, because I've talked publicly about my cert journey with Linux Academy before. And one of the biggest questions I get asked is, hey, I'm looking to transition. Like, is this worth it? Can I do it? I'm like, 100%. Like, I don't know what the heck the cloud was until I got into it. So definitely possible.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's take just a second though. For anyone just joining us, we didn't really give a rundown of what the show is today. We were too excited to start getting conversation going with you, Nikki. I mean, I think
was just ready to go.
Nikki, you and I actually have a lot in common. I think I would love to share some of my story with you too.
Yeah.
It sounds very similar. But we are Howdy Partner. If you've never watched the show before, we bring in AWS partners from the AWS Partner Network. This is a first for Howdy Partner today. We're talking with Nikki Ames from Pariveda Solutions, which is a consulting partner, which is totally different than the typical partner that we've had on the show in the past, where we go through a product, we talk about how to use that product as an AWS user, and how that product makes your life easier. What Nikki does with Pariveda is actually come in and help you build solutions on AWS, probably amongst other places too, but we won't mention them. Just talking AWS today. So, I think what a lot of our audience probably will benefit from your experience in is a lot of consulting partners put a lot of credit into AWS certifications. We're going to have a special guest later, so stay tuned. Maybe about an hour from now, we might have somebody dropping by who you all might know. She is another host on another AWS Twitch show, and we're going to be talking about AWS certifications. You might know who that is. I don't know. We'll keep it a secret until she joins us. Yeah, Nikki, a lot of what you're saying hits really true for me, and anybody who has talked to me for longer than 5 minutes, I immediately tell them that I didn't start out in tech. I came to tech pretty late. I was a fourth grade elementary school English teacher at the beginning of my career, and then at 25, I went back to college. So my original degree was in English, and I had to go back. I didn't have to, but I chose to go back to get a computer science degree, which is also something that I talk with a lot of people who are trying to transition over to tech as well. They always ask, do I get a degree in this? Can I work without a degree in this? Do I go to a boot camp? There's lots of options for that. But at 25, went back, got a computer science degree, and started out in this industry. So that was obviously just like a couple months ago, because I'm clearly not much older than 25. I mean, just
27. Big 27's coming up next month, right?
I'm 25 and a half. I'm much older than 25 now.
We'll soon be celebrating your 11th, 25th birthday.
Hey, don't you tell people my age there, Taz. Anyway, so I wanted to ask you about that, Nikki. You mentioned taking some college coursework around computer science, but what's been your experience with do you need a degree in this? Does it help? Does it not matter? What do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of options are valuable, and it really just depends on the use case. I think for people who are younger, I think depending on what type of company you're trying to apply for, having any college degree is going to be good. I think in this day and age, people put a lot of stake in that. I think it's becoming less and less so for technology, but I don't think across the board we're there yet. So I think despite whatever major you're in, having just that degree is helpful for that first step. For computer science, I think it's definitely a lot easier to get interviews and get connected and get that first in. But at the end of the day, once you get into somewhere, I think that's all that really matters, because then you use that as a jumping point if you want to transition to another space. But I think just having the background to be able to support your qualifications, so whether it's in my case just kind of the strong problem solving abilities, or in your case you went back for that degree to prove that, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I've known other people, and there's people within Pariveda that have done boot camps. They did a college degree in something else and then went back and did a boot camp, and that worked for them to prove, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I have some experience. It may not be that formal knowledge, but I have something to show for what I've learned and what I can do. But the hardest step is always going to be that first one, that first job that you get, because it is a lot harder if you don't fit that traditional profile, is what I've seen.
Totally. Yeah, and I think one thing as well is you kind of mentioned that you did some statistics stuff in the beginning as well. My personal background is I came from a stats major background, and that was kind of my introduction into coding. And so, maybe I didn't start off with a pure coding language like, a C++ or, a script like web dev language like C# going up in the chat right now, or JavaScript. If you,
C#, who would talk about C#?
Yeah. But I think that there is so much commonality across the different programming languages that just being able to take thoughts and then put them into a sequential order, to be able to just take a process and document it out. I feel like that's what code is in a lot of ways, is it's just taking some complex process and making it go step by step. Now those steps might all execute at the same time, but just starting off there, I think is hugely important. So for folks that are starting off, I think there are a ton of great resources, and I have a lot of people ask me, what's the best programming language to start with? Is it JavaScript? Is it Should I go all the way down to C++? Should I do Python? Python comes up a lot. And honestly, I think it's whatever you have access to, whatever you think is easiest to learn. And more important than the language itself is to start building. I think that's like the number one recommendation I have for anybody who's getting into tech. Come up with an idea. Like, even if it's just something that's like silly. I remember like when I first like was doing like a coding project early on, and they just wanted us to be able to print like a little like tree or like a little pyramid of X's like in the console, and I thought that was so cool that like I wrote a bunch of like words, and then all of a sudden I was able to print that. Like, that is a start. And it doesn't sound like much for the people who have been like programming for a while, but like for those who are new, like just start with those little things. Just ask yourself a question like, could I make a weird pattern in the console? Could I do this? Maybe there's a problem that you're facing, or just like, you know, you want to do some kind of like a little home automation or something like that. You know, watch some YouTube videos, watch some Twitch streams, and just, you know, figure out a way to just start building as soon as possible. And as you go on, you can decide to become extremely loyal to a specific language and start hating on all of the others. But you don't have to worry about that for quite some time. That comes later.
Nikki, I wanted to ask, so I've seen a lot of talk. People are just getting started, right? For better or for worse, you'll see, you know, kind of some senior leaders in tech, you go on Twitter or something, talk about how this has to be your whole life. You have to go and program in your off hours. It has to be your like greatest passion. It has to be both your job and your hobby. If you don't love it, then you're not going to succeed. If you're not programming outside of work hours, you're not going to succeed, or reading about tech or doing whatever. I'm leading the question here because I like massively disagree with this perspective, right? I think it's kind of a dangerous approach. But in that same vein, what do you find? How did you, you know, speaking as somebody who had gaps in their knowledge around computer science, because I could barely turn a computer on before I went back to school. How did you fill in those gaps? What types of things helped? And you know, let's dispel this. You have to live and breathe coding type myth. Hopefully, with what you have as advice.
Yeah, hopefully you asked that, not knowing how I'm going to respond.
I know. But I don't know. I'm hoping that you don't say, yeah, you got to spend 6 hours every day outside of work or something. Yeah. Anyway, go on.
8 hours, exactly. No. Yeah, no, I'm in a similar vein. Like, I've never really been driven to like tinker with things or really have my own kind of side projects. I don't know. Personally, when I work, that's kind of the last thing I want to do. I just want to sit and I want to enjoy my reality television shows and hang out. I think for me though, to fill in those gaps, at the end of the day, it's just like staying curious. There's nothing wrong if you want to live and breathe your whole life in the world of technology. There's so much out there that you can learn, and I know people get a lot of joy and sense of purpose from that. For me, I don't find that. What I do and how I've chosen to try and learn as much as possible and fill in those gaps that I had, especially early on, is just ask a lot of questions. Like when I entered into my first client, there were a lot of things that I had no idea about, just around process within an enterprise. You know, what are these agile ceremonies that we're doing every day? Why are we doing them? You know, when I'm solving a problem and I'm taking on a story to implement a piece of functionality, like, why are we doing it this way versus this way? And luckily within Pariveda, you know, we have a structure in place that we have mentors, and growth is really focused on it at an individual level. So everyone is rooting you on, and everybody is responsible for helping grow the people on their team. So I was very lucky. I was in an atmosphere where it was not only encouraged, but it expected that the people above me, my leads, were expected to help me grow. But at the end of the day, it was just about asking questions. And it's like, oh, okay, we were in this conversation and someone said something about this and I didn't really know what that meant. So I would just like keep a list of things. And then I'd go follow up with my leads, like, let's talk through this. How is the structure? Why are we talking about this? Why is this important? So I think it's important to still propel yourself, and doing the work at hand is not enough, but I don't think you have to necessarily commit your entire full self to being a technologist 24 hours a day to be successful.
I'm glad I asked that now, because
I'm shocked. I'm shocked at these responses.
The answer that I was hoping. That makes me happy. I mean, that's the thing, right? We see this a lot. At least I do. And one area too I wanted to ask you about and see your thoughts on. Something that helped me a lot was, not surprisingly, I'm sitting here on Twitch talking to a bunch of people, is community, right? Like, and you mentioned asking questions, right? Did you find it important in your journey to find a community that helped you, right? It sounds like you had that at work, but I think outside of work too, if you can find a community to help you grow, that might be helpful too. What do you think about that, Nikki?
Do you mean grow just personally and generally, and finding a community you fit in, or finding like a specific technology community to help support that?
That's a really, really interesting place. One of the questions I wanted to lead into asking you later too is, when I first joined tech, my idea of tech was everybody was an SDE, right? Or a software development engineer. Everybody was writing code all day. That was your job. And then a few years in, I actually discovered, oh wait, there are other tech jobs. That's crazy. All these different types of areas. So I think consulting partner and working at a consulting partner is one of those areas that a lot of people overlook. But back to your clarification of my question, it's kind of interesting too. As you develop more experience in tech, you start getting more specialized, right? You start finding areas that you enjoy working more, and your community might change, right? So you might be just talking to a Python development community, and then you realize, oh, I like writing Python code, but I also like deploying it, right? And then you start gravitating towards this DevOps community, and your communities change and shift. What I really meant was, I think it's very key, one, to find a mentor, and so I'd love to hear some thoughts on how you suggest people find mentors. But just general, like, how do you go out and find people to talk with about tech? How do you and when I say grow, I do mean in the sense of your technical abilities. How do you find people that help get you to that next level? What are some things that you've done, Nikki?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been very, very fortunate that a lot of that is just built into the structure of Pariveda. So I haven't really had to try that hard of finding that and satisfying that need. One of the things that I am involved in is a nonprofit based in Dallas called Bold Idea. And we work with kids all over the Metroplex to help teach them coding concept and teamwork and being able to effectively realize their own bold ideas and be able to implement that. And that's something I initially got involved with because I'm super passionate about getting underrepresented groups into technology. So especially young women, not surprising to probably a lot of people. I work with a whole lot of dudes, and it would be great to have more people that I can identify with around me. So that's been great because we have a community of volunteers that a lot of them are in the software technology industry, not all of them. You don't have to be technical to volunteer with this nonprofit. But it's been cool to be able to network, I guess, with other like-minded professionals. So it's not only like a personal community, but it's also a professional community. And people are coming from all different places, whether it's different languages, different areas in the organization. Some people still in college, some people in high school, some people that have been in their careers for 40 plus years. So that's been super helpful for me to just kind of establish a community of technologists within Dallas. From a mentoring and a growing my skills perspective, like I said before, like that's all pretty baked into Pariveda, which is nice. And I think the sheer fact of being a consulting partner, kind of what my, not day-to-day, but at a little bit broader scope is, I'm brought into a client and work on site with that client for the period of the engagement. So my engagements that I've been on have been anywhere from a few months to a few years. So what's really cool about that is I transition through various clients. So not only am I getting to work on different projects, but I'm seeing different enterprises. You know, is it a big one where we have to navigate a lot of complexity and maybe politics? Is it a really small company that we have a lot of freedom to choose whatever tools we want and things like that? But also those relationships don't die at the end of the engagement. So, you know, I still keep in contact with people I worked with a few years ago, and being able to connect the dots back to, okay, well, you know, I have this community of .NET developers when I worked at this company on a custom web app. And then, you know, I went somewhere else and did mobile work. And, you know, I have those people that we worked with. And even within an enterprise, oftentimes we're interacting kind of the full scope. So it's not just the developers on my team I'm working with. You know, maybe we work with the infrastructure team, and maybe we work with the data team. And there's a lot of exposure we get to be able to build relationships across firms and across towers, quote unquote, of technology, which is nice.
For sure. And I think there's another takeaway for the folks that are listening who maybe you aren't necessarily in a position that you are looking for a mentor. That might indicate that you're in a perfect position to become a mentor to other people. And so, like, things like Bold Idea, you know, there are programs like that all across the world. You know, just look for it. How did you come across Bold Idea, Nikki?
Yeah, so I was actually, as part of Pariveda, we have in our kind of expectations that at various levels, you're expected to do a certain amount of community service. So that's kind of built into our culture. So when I first joined the firm, I was like, okay, well, I don't really have a lot of strings here in Dallas. Like, let's see how I can get invested in my community and start getting involved in a company or a nonprofit instead of just doing kind of one-off things where I'm not fully invested in. So I was just Googling around for like women in tech, girls in tech, and I came across like this editorial from Robin Brown, who's one of the founders of Bold Idea. And she was basically just talking about why she decided to start Bold Idea. And it really spoke to me. So I reached out to her and I sent an application, and I've been with them not since the very beginning, but essentially since they started working with middle school students. And fun little fact, just a random thing, she ended up, the founder, Robin, ended up being the cousin of a girl that I grew up dancing with my whole life. So fun little small connection. But it really just was Googling around.
For sure.
That's crazy. So let me kind of shift gears towards the consulting partner side, right? I mean, I think probably the first thing I want to ask is, how did you end up at a consulting partner? What led you down that path to join a consulting partner?
Well, the answer probably should be a lot more intentional, but it's not. Coming from my non-traditional background, I was basically applying to basically any software job that sounded interesting. And one of the big focuses, I was looking at companies that, you know, valued diversity and had, you know, mentions of that. And no surprise, almost no places called me back because I don't have a lot of experience or a degree in computer science. But my mom was actually helping me just like search around for jobs. And I grew up in McKinney, which is just north of Dallas, a suburb of Dallas. And she was very invested in getting me back in the area from Michigan. So naturally, when she was searching, all the things that she happened to send me were in Dallas. And she just happened to come across Pariveda and read the mission of focusing on the individual and lifelong growth, very big on just kind of learning new things and continuing to learn. And I just applied and then it happened. So I didn't really know what it meant to get into consulting when I applied or when I interviewed or when I took the job. I just knew, hey, this company's values seem to align with mine, and I am happy for a job where I can learn, and then we'll see what happens. So
I have a similar. My mom didn't find it, but one of the paths that laid out in front of me when I like you, right? I had no experience. I had no clue how to get in at any of these places, right? And I was at this point in my life in Houston, Texas, which doesn't have like a huge tech scene. It's gotten a lot better actually in the past few years. But one of the options ahead of me was I didn't end up taking it. A consulting company was offering to take new hires and completely teach them in a program over 3 months while paying you to be a Salesforce developer, right? To learn all the aspects of Salesforce development, because they, contract out a lot of work, I'm sure, across most consulting companies with building Apex, custom Salesforce development stuff. I didn't end up taking that path. What I ended up doing was working for a startup company in Houston as their doc writer. Like I started in their documentation side, and then I convinced them to start letting me program. And
Convince
just like
them
you
to
said,
let you play with the computer instead of the typewriter.
Yeah, exactly. Just like you said, though, Nikki, once you have that foot in the door, and you can start building off of that experience. And honestly, that degree that I went back and got didn't matter at that point. And I got like a super cheap degree from like a public college, all online in Alabama. I never went to Alabama. I've never been to Alabama. So it didn't, like, none of it, nobody's ever asked me about my degree. So it's really about that experience, I think, that you build from those opportunities, right? Like just maybe you stumbled into it, right? Or maybe your mom sent you the job posting. I love that. That's awesome.
Oh, Mom.
So just a quick interlude here for those who have just joined. We are Howdy Partner, and the purpose of this show is to invite AWS Partner Network members to come and share a little bit about their company. We are excited to have Nikki Hames from Pariveda Solutions with us, and she's talking about her journey through tech and what it's like working at a consulting partner.
And with that in mind, what is a day in your life as a technical consulting manager, or maybe even before, when you joined Pariveda, before you got into the management track? That's something we can talk in detail through too. There's definitely different tracks in the tech world between management and individual contributor. But what does a person who is hired on at a consulting firm do? What do you do from day to day?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And my day-to-day has definitely changed based on the project, but also just based on, am I in a developer role? Am I in a tech lead role? Am I managing the team? So when I was a developer, most of the projects I've worked on, all operate in an agile fashion. So following sprint cadences, you'd have your stand-up, you have your stories that you're responsible for, you would develop, and then you do all the ceremonies, your retro, and you plan for the next sprint and keep going. I think for me, like something, especially having a more kind of well-rounded background in liberal arts and social science and such, like I definitely craved like I don't want to be a code monkey. I don't want to just sit and code all day long and not have a understanding of the bigger picture or having exposure to other processes. So definitely looked for opportunities to like get more involved in other aspects of just development. So whether that was, taking on the triage process for all the bugs that come in. So at one of my first clients, we had an offshore testing team, so they would log a bunch of bugs in our system. I'd go through and, validate, okay, this person worked on this thing, we need to assign that to them, or, oh, hey, this is actually working as expected. So even still involved in that technical space, and just having a different context switch to help kind of break up the monotony. And then just transversing through different clients and projects, depending on kind of the complexity of the nature, there may be more architecture conversations that need to happen. So being able to facilitate that and learn how to effectively run meetings and how to architect solutions and get buy-in from stakeholders or from other people on your team, I think was a lot of what I was working with, and making sure, other people, as I transitioned kind of more into a tech lead role, like still responsible for all the development, but now I'm also responsible for making sure other people on my team have what they need to learn as well. So talking through architecture solutions with them, talking through and making sure they have the context to why they're doing what they're doing, not just, hey, implement this, but implement this because it's going to impact the end user this way. So making sure we're focusing on that larger picture. And then now as a technical manager, I'm not really hands to keyboard that much. I'm still involved in kind of a day-to-day, like an architecting role to ensure the bigger picture is how we expect. But may look at code reviews from time to time. We're kind of in a crunch time with my current project, so I've hopped on to code out some things to be able to help keep the team on track. So it's nice having that versatility, being able to jump in multiple areas. But at this point, with kind of managing and with management, like I'm effectively responsible for the delivery of our project. So not only is that making sure we have the right requirements, both from a business perspective, but also from a technical perspective, it's also making sure that our leaders are getting the right information and our customers are getting the right information. We're talking to the right people. It's keeping track of what people are doing and keeping them accountable, and helping my team learn so that they have the building blocks to be successful and independent. I'm working on an AWS project right now, so I'm able to help fill in the gaps with some of the people on my team that maybe don't have as much experience in that space. So I still get to stay technical and still be involved in a lot of those conversations of like, what is a VPC? What is an EC2? How do these interact with each other with this application? Like, here are the 8 different components. Like, why is this in place? Why is it architected this way? How does the networking work that this piece can talk to this piece? And so it's a lot more varied as I've moved up of kind of what my day-to-day looks like, which makes it super fun. And every day is different, which is great.
So I have a question. So like as you kind of moved along this, this career path, how did AWS factor into this? When did you get introduced to that? And throughout the process, you got a couple of certifications. Could you talk a little bit about how that went for you?
Yes, the good old certification journey. So I was working on a project, and within Pariveda, they were starting up this group called Rally Point. Don't ask me why it's called that, because I do not know. But effectively, as I'm pretty sure we're categorized as a premier partner. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, Yep. Great. So with being a premier partner, Pariveda has to maintain a certain number of professional AWS certifications across the firm. And we were at a point where a lot of people's certs were expiring, so they were doing a push to have more people get certified to help increase those numbers, but also to increase the breadth of knowledge within the Dallas office for AWS. So I joined this group. It was, I think, started off around, it was about 10 of us, I think. More so just because I was a little bored on my current project, and I am just very excited about learning new things. And it's very interesting to me to have that structured thing. So I kind of showed up and I'm like, I don't know what the heck any of this is, but love a good learning. So let's do this. And
you heard it here first, folks. If you're bored, go learn AWS.
Yep, that's exactly what I said. But effectively, the way the program was structured was we worked towards 4 different AWS certifications, all within 8 months, so 2 months each. We started with the Associate Solutions Architect, then did the Associate SysOps, and then did Professional DevOps, and then Professional Solution Architect. So a lot of this was self-learning. We would, the way I did it is I'd watch like Linux Academy videos and get through the whole course on that. And then I'd go through like quiz questions to test my knowledge. And a lot of it just it took time and energy. Like, you know, you do a full day at work and probably studied like 3 hours a day for those 2 months. Again, you know, not every day, you gotta vary it up, but it was definitely an investment of time to get the certifications. And I was very fortunate that there were, you know, 9 other people there doing the exact same thing as me. And even though I wasn't on an AWS project at the time, I didn't really have any like practical knowledge of, oh, okay, I've worked with this before. Like now I understand how it works. Like I didn't really have that. So I worked with other coworkers who were on projects that could pull up, you know, their console and be like, oh, well, this is how we do it at my client. Like, let's talk through this. Here's a practical example that I can apply my learning to. And it was tough. I think the first one was honestly the hardest for me, just getting all of that knowledge and things like I had never really understood before outside of the cloud, let alone in the cloud. Like, I don't really know how networking works, but it's like, not only do I have to understand the core principles of networking, I have to understand how they're implemented in AWS. But once I passed that first cert, I felt a lot more confidence. I think before it was just like, oh shoot, do I know this? Can I learn this? Like, am I capable? But having the validation that I did pass, I know what I'm talking about, I deserve to be here, I think definitely helped a lot of that kind of imposter syndrome of not really knowing anything with AWS before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, preparing for that test, I agree with everything you've said. It's a tough one, getting to that first one. Especially the first one. I don't think I've been more nervous about a single test than I was about that one. But, you know, once you get through that, they become a little bit easier. You start to understand. I mean, they all kind of build off of each other. And so, you know, right now we have the 3 associate exams. So we've got developer, SysOps, and solutions architect. You said you started with the solutions architect one, and I think that's a fantastic option for anybody who's thinking they want to try a certification. But, you know, if maybe you feel like you're more drawn to the developer side of things, start there, or SysOps. It all depends on kind of where your background is. But any one of those 3 will be a great start, and they all very much feed into those other 2 professional exams.
Yeah.
I'll say if you are currently employed by a tech company or a company where you are doing a technical job, go talk to your manager about professional development funds. Don't pay for this stuff yourself if you don't have to. But if you don't have the conversation, you don't know what's available to you either. So be sure, don't be afraid. A lot of companies set aside money for this, for their employees. So go talk, find out what you have available to you before you go shell out for these certifications yourself, if you're already employed, obviously. If you're not, I dropped a link. If you're a student, for example, AWS Educate is a good program that you can go. There's some things and resources there that you can qualify for as a student. You can go check these things out too.
I wouldn't be surprised too if some like colleges and universities may pay for certifications or training material in certain cases.
Yeah, there are definitely some options available. Some colleges are starting to introduce courses, and then we also have through the AWS Educate program. If you're a college student, you can actually sign up for some stuff through that as well. So some great options as a college student, and you know, I wouldn't wait. Like just because maybe you're a college student, you're like, oh, I want to, you know, I'm not going to be building any applications for a company for maybe a couple of years. Like there's no reason you can't just go ahead and start now and, you know, have that associate solution, like that associate certification on your resume when you graduate. That's a really, really tough accomplishment. I think it shows a lot about your work ethic as a college student.
I think it's helpful for those of us who transitioned from a different career path as well into tech. It's another one of those less expensive ways than going back like I did and putting my entire tuition on a credit card and just saying, let's see if this works. You know, getting some of these certs while they're not, you know, available to everybody who you know, you still have to pay for them, obviously. They are a cheaper way than going back and getting a college degree or even doing a boot camp in a lot of circumstances as well, from what I've seen. So they can help differentiate your resume to show that you are motivated and you are, you know, trying to learn as much as you can to break into that first job.
And you know, I've heard that some cities even have like meetups where they'll have like a meetup for AWS certification groups, or you know, if you don't have one, start one. Like there are surely a few other people in your area who would be interested in this. And like something that Nikki mentioned was, you know, she did this with that group. And I'll be honest, in college I was not a group studier. I hated group studying, but doing the AWS certifications, that honestly completely changed my mind on that, because you do get to pull from the experiences of different people. And also what's nice about it is sometimes like people ask, like you'll see a question and maybe you think you know the answer completely, and then someone will look at it a little bit different than you did, and they'll ask you that question and you'll have to completely like reconsider how you think about certain problems or questions. And that's so valuable to be able to have different people interacting to give you that kind of, you know, just different contexts.
So we're getting close to, oh, sorry, go ahead, Nikki, please.
No, you're good.
I was just gonna say we're getting close to the hour mark where we're not sure exactly when our special guest is going to pop in, by the way. So she might be a little past the hour. We'll see. But I just wanted, since we have about 10 minutes left, to kind of steer. So we'll be talking about certifications and tips and tricks, and actually maybe doing some questions live on the show when our special guest joins us. But before we do that, since we'll be talking about certs here in just a little bit, I wanted to shift to give you a chance, Nikki, to talk about some of the exciting things you've gotten to work on at Pariveda. You know, maybe talk through why would I go join a consulting company like Pariveda if I were, you know, somebody with a tech background that wanted to do something like that.
Yeah, of course. Being a consulting firm, I've had the opportunity to work on a lot of very, very different things with very, very different companies. So that's been really nice to just see different options. How are people using AWS? How does it fit within organizations? At my last project I was on, we did some really cool things out there. I was lucky enough that I got to use my AWS knowledge to help educate the team, and I worked towards getting the client developers on our team certified with the AWS Associate Developer. We were brought in to help build a data lake, and we were working in a blended team, so part Pariveda, part client developers. And part of the reason we were brought in is because they didn't have the cloud expertise to be able to deliver on that themselves. So not only was it an effort to build this data lake, but one of the really important things we focus on as a consulting firm and at Pariveda is, what happens when we leave? Like, we're not successful if we build something and then we hand it off and no one knows how to use it or work it or maintain it. So it's really important that, especially within these blended teams, that we're carrying these client developers along the journey with us, and they're learning and they have as much knowledge as us throughout this whole process. So that was a really cool experience that I hadn't really done before, bringing people along on that journey who had never really touched cloud before in most cases, and having them get certified and then being able to be effective developers on the data lake that we were building. So that was a really cool project, because getting to explore the ins and outs of data from a larger perspective, when you're kind of on the common services or like more platform infrastructure facing, it's such a different world than when you're building like a public facing app or an app for consumers. The consumers of infrastructure are the other teams in the enterprise. So working on this data lake, it was navigating a lot different than, I'm working on an app, I need to go talk to the customers of, hey, what do you want? What needs to happen as part of this? Versus like, I have to cater to 40 different teams in the enterprise, and they're all producing data that looks differently, and they're all wanting to send data that in different ways. So how can we build a scalable, maintainable system that doesn't have all these custom one-off things? And we got to work with Lake Formation, which is recently came out with AWS. So that was pretty cool, being able to be one of the first kind of big companies to utilize that. Yeah, so I think that's all I have to say about that one. That was a pretty cool project that I learned a lot from. What I'm working on right now that I feel really passionate about, and I don't think I would have said maybe 2 years ago being on a project like this would feel as satisfying. But we're working with a company that recently acquired another company that has this AWS system already built. They have accounts, they have infrastructure, and they're more of a smaller startup company. So Pariveda was brought in to help with the migration effort to not only bring over all of the AWS applications and system into the existing company's AWS ecosystem, but we are also able to re-architect to a certain extent from a security perspective to make sure we're following security best practices, but also make sure we're optimizing for automation and building scalable patterns to deploy out. So everything is infrastructure as code. We build once and promote and are able to automate the deployments to each environment. We have automated testing in place in our pipelines, and with we're using Datadog right now. But this is very infrastructure focused. I'm not dealing with what the application actually does. I'm dealing with how can we build this infrastructure in an automated way so it makes it easy to support and maintain as people come on board and we need to transition this project off, they have a clear idea of where to go for the configurations, or, hey, I need to deploy this. What are the steps? Well, you just press a button. You don't have to manually log into a server to put some artifact somewhere and start it up. So it's been really great to see how being able to transform an application like that and being able to see it go to production. We're actually like right in the middle of our production cutover this week, actually. And our biggest criteria for success is that nothing changes from a customer perspective. So a little anticlimactic on that side, but really cool to see, hey, we did all these really cool things to make it better from a development user and an infrastructure support perspective. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change the usability from a client perspective, and it only makes it more stable for them as they continue to develop and iterate, as well as more secure. So that's been really cool to see. And it's also been really cool as I'm managing this project. So I get a lot of influence in the architecture that we're making, and being able to make sure that like my team is on the same page, and we all know why we're doing the things that we're doing, which is cool.
I had one last question for you, because I think I heard a knock on our door. I'm going to go, after I ask you this, I'm going to go see who's there. But what was your most favorite architecture that you've designed, and why? And what can you walk us through that architecture too?
Oof, I don't know if I have a favorite architecture. So
it's something that you figured out that like you felt really clever about, or like something that you looked at and you're like, I can't believe I designed this. This is crazy. Anything like that? I don't know. That's kind of a tough question, I guess.
Yeah, because like with the nature of consulting too, like more often than not, we're brought in on existing legacy systems. So it's not like we're building something net new necessarily from an architecture perspective. Sometimes we are, and in some cases we are, but I think more often than not, it's inheriting something and having to navigate, okay, well, this is the current structure. You have to balance the value proposition over the time it's going to take. You can't spend years automating things and making it the best possible if you're not going to be able to deliver value to the end user in that time as well. So I don't know if I have a specific architecture that I super loved. I like being in a position where I'm getting exposed to a lot of different architectures, and it's been interesting within enterprise development, especially, like you're very much subject to the culture of that enterprise. So I personally really love working in large, complex political environments, which probably a lot of people shy away from that because you don't have a lot of control. But a lot of places, like some of the services by AWS, they say you can't use, and you have to go through a process to get it approved. There's a lot more things to navigate from there. So I think it's been really interesting not only to see various architectures across projects and clients, but able to architect within a kind of confined structure and knowing when to push back and knowing when, okay, this is the situation we're working in and we have to make it work within that.
So within that vein of large, complex environments, watch this transition. This is going to be great. A large, complex environment, right? That's what you were just talking through. We're in one of those right now. We're about to do a show within a show. Okay, that's pretty complex, if you ask me. We're about to kick off the second half of the show, which is no longer Howdy Partner. We're about to be taken over. So let me just go ahead and put up our banner here to let everyone know. There we go. So we've got the banner, and now our special guest, MJ Bailey. Introduce yourself, MJ. Everybody already knows you. I'm
Hello.
sure.
Wow, I can't believe I'm here on Howdy Partner. Thank you so much for having me, AM. Nikki, I just heard your last couple of questions there, and I certainly wish I could have heard the whole thing. So I might go back and rewatch that, actually. It's such a pleasure to be on here with you. Hi, Taz. How are you?
Great. Good to see you again.
Ready for, as AM just said, for me to kind of take over a bit. I don't know if I can fill these big boots. And would you like to take part in a collaborative episode of CQ with me?
Yeah, absolutely. This is what I've been looking forward to all day.
Well, seeing as it's only 8 a.m. on my side of the world, I can't say I've been looking forward to it all day, but I have been looking forward to the hour or so that I've been up already. So let me share my questions with you all.
Okay.
That'd be a good start.
We're going to go through. A certification that I don't think any of us have. I don't know. Do you have this one, Taz?
I don't have this one.
And I don't think you do either, Nikki.
No, yeah, okay, well, I do. So I've got us covered, okay?
There you go. I'm so excited to make Nikki answer these questions live on air.
I'm excited to do it with you all. So we are going to do CQ on Howdy Partner today. So welcome everyone to CQ, the AWS Certification Quiz Show, where we're here having a bit of a look at the Cloud Practitioner exam today. So I thought I would start us off nice and easy, just in case we have collabs in the future, and we can build it up from there. So as a reminder for all of my viewers and some extra information for the Howdy Partner viewers, the Cloud Practitioner exam covers 4 main topics, okay? And we do go over a bit of each of these in today's episode. So we're going to be looking at some cloud concepts, some fundamental knowledge that you will need to know for the exam. We'll touch on security and compliance, technology as a whole, and billing and pricing, which definitely comes up on this particular exam. So with that in mind, I thought we could start with AM asking me a question, if that sounds all right. But on the screen won't actually change. So
I think AM's been vying for this job for a long time. He's been wanting to be a CQ host.
I did hear it on the grapevine, actually. So then it might, introduce Nikki and Taz to how we're going to play the rest of the game, if I can do the opener for you. So I'm going to throw back to you, AM, for the first question number 1.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to pick it up to the screen share only so that people can see the full question here.
Awesome.
All right. So, MJ, this is very, very serious. Okay, I'm getting my serious voice on now. Question 1 is regarding design principles. I'm auditioning right now too, by the way. Which cloud architecture design principle is enabled by availability zones? Is it number 1, disposable resources instead of fixed servers? 2, removing single points of failure? 3, Amazon EC2? Or 4, loose coupling?
Wow. Well, you already totally changed the premise of CQ, because as the host, I've never read out the questions before. So thanks, AM, giving me a bit of a different style already. I love this. So let me jump into this for you. Definitely points for changing up the host already on question number 1. So I think we can all jump on this in particular. We are looking for a particular cloud architecture design principle. So immediately that helps us rule out one of the answers from what I can see, because EC2 is not a cloud design principle. It is one of our products, our Elastic Compute Cloud product. So I'm going to get rid of number 3 straight away. So just a bit of a tip there for everyone watching. If there is something that stands out that obviously doesn't belong there, just get rid of it straight away and start delving into some of the other answers. Now, the other 3 are design principles, okay? So let's have a look at what the question is really asking. It's asking us about availability zones in particular. So we need an answer that links us back to our AZs, of which I'm pretty sure there's 76 globally now, off the top of my head. probably way behind, and another one has come up, but 76, I'm pretty sure, AM. So let's have a bit of a look at our answers that AM has already kindly read out for us and see if we can find something that matches with availability zones. All right, so number 1, disposable resources instead of fixed services. Okay, so I don't think it's going to be this one, although it is an absolute design principle we would want to see in our cloud architecture. This is more referring to something that you can turn off when you don't need. Okay, so not necessarily linking us directly back to availability zones. So for now, I'm definitely going to get rid of number 1. Looking through the answers, jump into number 4, loose coupling, absolutely something, again, we would look to have in our architecture. However, this is the idea of if something is going to fail in one system, it doesn't break everything. Okay, so breaking it down into different components. So again, something we would definitely look for, but not necessarily, I'm thinking, to do with our availability zones. What are availability zones? Let's look at it from that way. I mean, I'm probably already giving away the answer here, seeing as I've got rid of 3, but let's just give our viewers a little bit more information. So we have our AWS regions, right? So specific, separate geographic areas and within those areas, the regions have multiple isolated locations, okay? And that's what our availability zones are. So each AZ has its own independent and interconnected infrastructure that allow our customers to build a fault-tolerant, highly secure, low latent network, all of these great design principles. And that's what we need to look for within our answer that we're going to give today, okay? So with that in mind, what all of those things do is basically remove a single point of failure in our architecture, okay? So I'm loving the look of number 2, AM. Quick reread, I think we've hit the nail on the head. I'm definitely going to go with number 2.
And you're correct.
I just realized you don't have the controls of the deck, so you can't actually reveal the answer. So I will do that bit for you. Yay!
It's so thrilling to be the host of CQ for like 2 minutes.
We'll have to get you the controls next time if we do another collab. So, Taz, Nikki, are you ready to get involved?
Ooh, I'm a little nervous, but I think we can do it.
I think you can do it. I think you've got this. And with that in mind, seeing as you spoke up first, Taz, I'm going to ask you question number 2.
Okay, I'm ready for it.
Oh, hopefully you didn't see that quick reveal of the answer. Number 2, we have a storage question just for Taz. Taz, which AWS storage service allows content to be accessed via a browser without using a compute service?
Sure. So, when we have storage, we have, basically a couple of options. One is block storage, and the other would be like an object storage. Knowing what I know about that, like block storage, I know you have to have some kind of a compute resource attached to it to be able to run it. And so, a lot of what the block storage looks like, it's kind of like a hard drive that you need to plug that into something to be able to do it. And so in this case, number 2, Elastic Block Store or EBS, I don't think that would be it. So we're going to knock that one out, which leaves us with 1, 3, and 4. Elastic File System is also similar to that in that, like, I'm not sure of a way to just access that without linking it up to some other AWS service. Like, you could do that through EC2, or now you can even do that with like serverless. You can go Lambda and be able to read some EFS stuff. And so because of each of those, I have a feeling it's not that, which leaves us with numbers 3 and 4. Number 4, let's talk about that one. This is fun. This is new. Like, this is less than, I don't know how long it's been, but maybe like within the past month or so that this was
one of our most
announced.
Recent, right?
Right,
AM, do
yeah.
you have a link you can put in our window for everyone?
For Snowcone?
Linking them to Snowcone? Yeah, because it's actually really cool for them to see. I think Taz is about to give us a bit of a description on it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So for all those who are not familiar, we have several snow-related storage devices that users can use. So the use case for this is maybe you need to transfer large amounts of data, but your network connection is not great, and so it may be easier to just load it on to a physical container and ship that to an AWS data center. They also, in some cases, you can use it to do some computation there on the device itself. And so we started off with AWS Snowball, and it was about a suitcase-sized thing. And then a few years ago, we wheeled out a giant truck that was basically just a giant hard drive truck called Snowmobile. And now we've taken it the other direction, and now we just have Snowcone. And it's a little box about that big. And so again, going back to the original question, could I access Snowcone from a web browser? No, probably not. Like that's not going to be the way you do that. And so that leaves us with Amazon's simple storage service. And that is absolutely correct. We can go in there, we can access it via the browser, and you can even host your own websites in S3. So you can put those static files up there and be able to use those and access them via the browser. So I'm going to go with answer number 3.
Awesome. And I love what you did there for all the viewers watching us. This is one of the key tips that we can give you when answering any of our certification questions. Process of elimination is the easiest way to get to the answer. So I love what you did there, Taz. Let's make sure you are indeed correct.
Fingers crossed.
Yet again, there we go. I'm looking over here at this screen trying to watch the chat. I'm trying to control it up here, and it's really hard being on Howdy Partner today, but we'll get there. Let's give it a go with question number 3. Taz, how about you flick this question over to Nikki?
Okay, Nikki, are you ready for this?
Oh, I'm so ready.
Okay, so we're going to go into the world of billing. Your organization has multiple applications running in one AWS account. You have been asked to apportion AWS costs by application. What could you use to identify costs related to each application?
What a wonderful question, and definitely
Nikki,
something...
I'm so sorry you got the billing question.
No, it's okay. I'm good.
She could have spoken up sooner.
Love all the money. And this is definitely a very common use case as well. So looking at the answers, use multiple Amazon VPCs, tag all resources, assign a different IAM role to each application, purchase reserved instances. So looking at number 3, assign a different IAM role to each application. So knowing IAM, I know that is dealing with permissions. So having, let's say, an EC2 be able to communicate to a database or to SQS or any other AWS resource. So dealing with permissions, that doesn't really have anything to do with billing. So gonna X that one out. Looking at number 4, purchase reserved instances. So this is in the realm of cost. So this allows EC2 instances, you can save money if you effectively pay for them up front instead of running on demand. And you can even share reserved instances if you have multiple kind of linked accounts within an AWS organization, which is a really great tool of AWS orgs. So this will save you money. However, this won't really help me know which application is running whatever amount of money. So it really doesn't differentiate. So I'm going to cross that out. And then looking at number 1, use multiple Amazon VPCs. Well, this is more just a way to split up your networking. Like you could use this potentially as an option, but you would have to do something more to be able to identify what application is using what resources. So in and of itself of just using 2 separate VPCs, that doesn't tell me anything about cost. So
technically, all the VPCs would go to the same bill. So
yes, exactly right. So then that leaves me with number 2, tag all resources. So tagging may seem like a concept that's on everything these days. Key value pair, let me put a name on it, maybe an app name, a business unit. But these are leveraged very highly in billing mechanisms. And there's a lot of finer grained kind of one-offs that I won't get it too much. But effectively, if you tag your resources appropriately, you can put application 1 on all the applications that are on all the AWS resources used for that, and application 2, whatever it's called, on all the resources consumed by that. And then within the billing, you can easily segment out by tag to be able to identify what goes to what and be able to bill the right department for that. So I'm going to go with number 2, tag all resources.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the explanation there. That was great. We absolutely want to bill by department. So let's reveal the answer. And Nikki absolutely nailed it. Yay. Now, I think it's only fair we bring our host. I guess I'm the guest host of the Howdy Partner Host show. So, Nikki, do you want to throw the next question to AM?
Of course.
Oh, wait. I never agreed that I would answer questions. I mean,
no.
This is how I lose my job, isn't it? Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, AM, you ready? Okay, question 4, we're going to be talking about databases. What type of database capability is provided by Amazon Aurora? Is it time series database, NoSQL database, relational database, or a graph database?
Okay. Whew. All right. First off, I have to say I really appreciate you using the AM approved method of asking the question.
Watched a lot of game shows in my day.
I think that's really, indicative that I got it right. I just had that instinct, Anyways, not to pat myself on the back too hard. So this one's kind of tough, right? Because it's just a service name in the question. There's not a whole lot of other things here to help you eliminate some of these, unless you've heard of this service. Never heard of this service, you might find this question pretty challenging. Now, you may have associated, this could give you a heads up or a leg up. If you've heard of Aurora before, you might know that it's related to the RDS side of services as well. So that might help you start to eliminate some things. I think let's say we know a little bit about some NoSQL database offerings in AWS, right? I'd say the first and foremost one that comes to my mind is Dynamo, right? DynamoDB, a specific AWS database. So I probably know that Aurora is not in that realm, right? Since there's already a prominent kind of NoSQL database that AWS has, if I were to know about that NoSQL database. So let's get rid of number 2, right? NoSQL doesn't sound right to me. Let's see. With time series, if you've been paying attention to some reInvent announcements from a few years back, maybe 1 or 2, I'm not even sure actually on the GA-ness or availability of our time series database at this point. So that might give me that seems a little too new, and Aurora, maybe I know that it's existed for a while.
So AM, you bring up a great point there that leads me to give a quick tip to our viewers as well on our exams. You're absolutely right. So when something is released, it will not be put on our exams until it's been out for 6 months or more. So you actually bring up a great point without potentially even knowing that.
These things just come to me. I don't know how it happens. But yeah, Amazon TimeStream is our time series database. Yeah, I'd have to check. I'd have to look. I haven't paid close attention to it, so I don't even know what the update is on that. So I already know the answer. I don't want to give you the answer because we still have to eliminate. We have 3 and 4 left. Again, with graph database, it's a newish thing. It's not as new as time series. but I know that Neptune is our graph database engine that lets us utilize graph databases with. So let's say I never heard of Aurora, but I knew all these other things. That would give me a way to eliminate these answers, right? It's got to be number 3, relational databases. And I know this because of the marketing that is surrounding Aurora. It's one of these really great ways to adopt when you are running a SQL database engine that you want to kind of get more enterprise grade with some of these open source versions like Postgres or MySQL. I also know it because my friend Gabe Hollenby, who is a developer advocate out in
out of my side of the world.
Yeah, his daughter is named Aurora, so I definitely know Aurora is the relational database.
Awesome. Let's reveal the answer. Absolutely correct. We are 4 for 4 so far, team. So in that vein, let me take this back. I reckon you've all got it. I'm going to take the reins. And now, my pleasure to play the show properly with 3 guests. I'm super excited. So let's do open floor. Whoever's got something to say, let's go for it. Everyone happy?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, another pricing question, which is very telling of this CP exam, if anyone wants to make note of that. So here we go. Question number 5. Which of the following pricing models provides the lowest cost for storage in Amazon S3?
Ooh, this is a tricky one. They try to trick you in a couple of places, because I'm seeing some areas like, if I just read lowest cost, like my mind goes down to spot instances there. Where
that's exactly what producer John was trying to do. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's where my mind went immediately, and I was like, oh, spot instances, that's going to give you the lowest cost because it's based off of, well, basically you basically bid for a certain amount of cost, and as it goes above, you may lose access to that, but then when it drops below your set price, then you get access to it again. So it's a great way to do compute cheaply, but you got to read the whole question.
That's exactly right. Compute cheaply.
That's compute cheaply, and this is asking for S3, which is not compute. So I would have got that one wrong.
Keep going, Taz. What else?
Oh,
what
am
else?
I doing the whole thing?
Yeah,
I thought, okay, I'll keep going.
Smoke. It's you now. This is all you.
So then that leaves us with like 3 other options. So we've got instant store, which again, like if we've really identified that we're doing S3, instant store is not going to, that's not what we're talking about there. And the same thing with savings plans. Like that's not something that you really talk about in relationship to S3, and so that really leaves only that one option, which is standard storage. And another thing to keep in mind too on this one that makes it a little bit tricky is it says which of the following pricing models. So is standard storage the cheapest S3 pricing model? No, it's not. Like we can take that down to Glacier, which will actually be a lot cheaper for you to store long term. And so this is a multi-layered question here. So you really have to read the whole thing.
Absolutely. So, yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Taz.
Yep.
That's exactly what we were being a bit cheeky with this question. And the reason for that, you've kind of said it in so many words, Taz, that the answer is often in the question, and it can literally be one single word in this one being S3 being the key to the answer. So you delivered that perfectly. Our answer is absolutely standard storage. I think you can sit back and relax. Next one, AM or Nikki? Let's do it.
Ooh.
Oh, a bit of security. Here we go. Good. I'm glad we've got this one. Here we go. An application running on an Amazon EC2 instance needs to access resources in Amazon S3. How can you assign permissions to the instance so that the application can access S3? Who's going to take this one?
I can take this one. I love a good security as well. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I think the key here too is with any of these AWS questions, I feel like you can take it a lot of different ways. So you really have to pay attention to what the question is asking. So the key here is the application needs to access resources in Amazon S3. So I have an EC2 instance and it needs to talk to S3. So we're talking about between service communication. So looking through the options, use identity federation to log into the instance. Well, logging into the instance has nothing to do with me talking to S3. So I know that's not the right answer. Similarly, provide an MFA token to the application. Again, I'm not sure how multi-factor authentication has anything to do with S3. Seems like a very application-specific thing. Generate a key pair for the instance. Well, this is a good security thing. I can use the key pair to, again, log into the instance. But again, that has nothing to do with communicating with S3 or any other resource. So number 4, assign an IAM role to the instance. So this is the only one that actually talks about something outside of the scope of just the application running on EC2 instance. So an IAM role will be able to allow the EC2 instance to communicate and have the permissions, the correct permissions to be able to communicate with any AWS service. So I'm going to go with 4, assign an IAM role.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
Why can't I just put my access key and secret access key into the EC2 instance and give it permission to access it that way?
Well, technically, you could do that. However, that's not best practices because now your credentials are on the box. So now you don't have rotation of keys. If whoever has access to log into the box, and depending on how you set up your architecture, that could be a whole lot of people, they now have access to using those keys however they want. So they can nefariously use them to do other things as well. So IAM role is AWS's recommended best practice of any instance where you need to communicate with AWS resources.
Happy with that, Taz?
You make me cry.
That makes sense to me. Sorry.
No, I love it. That's awesome. Go for it. So Nikki is locking in number 4, correct? Let's reveal the answer. Of course, it's number 4, and I would suggest you do a bit of white paper searching on each of the answers to this question if you are going to set your CPE anytime soon. So thanks for that extra information, Nikki. You probably hit the nail on the head for exactly the level of detail that you would need to go into for what you need to know about each of these. So thank you very much. All right, I think AM is definitely up. He keeps trying to get out of this, I feel. So let's jump to a bit of compute. And we don't have many questions left, AM, so you know, you got to shine. Which of the following...
all right.
Which of the following AWS compute services is good for workloads that only run for brief periods in response to infrequent events?
Did we have to give AM this question?
This is why he didn't take the last one. I got it. It worked out perfectly for him.
That would assume that I knew what questions were coming, like I was some sort of sage or I could predict the future. I had no clue. I had no idea. I have no idea. Any of these.
I feel like this one is made for you.
I get paid every time I say this. Chris Munn sends a direct Venmo payment to me every time I say this service on Twitch. It's for you, Chris. Okay, so we're going to have to take a look at these real quick. There's one that I can immediately get rid of, and that's Amazon CloudWatch. So CloudWatch is number 4. And I get rid of that because it's not a compute service. I know that it's not a compute service. It's a logging and monitoring service and metric collection, things like that. You can get insights from it. There's all CloudWatch is foundational. If you don't know much about CloudWatch, it's a great area to really go and pull up those white papers, pull up those docs and just read through because it can do a ton of stuff, but not what this question's asking. It can't do any of that. Now the remaining 3, these are all compute platforms. We've got ECS, or Elastic Container Service, Lambda, and Elastic Compute Cloud, which I always forget is actually what EC2 stands for, right? Isn't that wild? I had to look at that for a minute and be like, what service is that? Oh, it's EC2. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of EC2 because those are servers. They just sit on all the time. I have to go spin them down, which you can. There are things like auto scaling groups that can actually do it, for you based off of metrics. But it's probably not the easiest or best thing for a brief period in time. You're still going to have the overhead of spinning up VM and all of these things. So we're left with the two services that, I'll say they fight over my heart, actually. These two things, ECS and Lambda, are I feel like constantly drawn between the two of them. Anyway, I'm going to get rid of ECS. Although, if I was being really tricky here, I could argue that Fargate on ECS actually could, potentially answer this question because.
But that's not an option, AM. So technically, you can't argue it.
That's right. So, this is an AM tip. Don't be too clever for yourself, okay?
Yes.
Don't extend out.
Tip of the week. I love that one.
Don't extend out it says clearly ECS. It doesn't say Fargate, right? But don't try and be tricky yourself and be like, oh, well, maybe they mean Fargate here. I don't know. So the answer here is very clearly AWS Lambda. You're welcome, Chris Munns. You can send the check in the mail if you'd like to.
I love that. And that's definitely my favorite tip of the week as well for this one. Don't be too tricky. I'll have to remember that for future guests on the show. Of course, it's Lambda. We couldn't be on a show with AM without giving him a Lambda answer. So very lucky that you ended up with that one because it wasn't the order I was going with. Tripped to AM. Do we have time to go on, AM? How's our time going?
I think
I can't see it with my millions of controls that I'm trying to look at here. We're good? All right.
We're good.
Let's bring Taz back in for security. Oh, actually, let's do a bit of all three of you on this one because I've got a nice image to go with it. So this is a great one for everyone to talk to. So maybe you can all get rid of an answer and then we'll reveal the one. So here we go. In the AWS shared responsibility security model, what is the responsibility of AWS? So what I'll do real quickly is I'll bring up our image. So maybe Taz can talk us through exactly what AWS looks after as opposed to what customer looks after.
Yeah, sure. So I think the best way to summarize that is either security of the cloud, which is what AWS will cover, versus security of the things that you put in the cloud. And so what I mean by that is AWS is going to secure things like the physical locations of our data centers, will secure our networks, and will secure the software that we provide to you all. Beyond that, it's up to you to decide what you actually want to put into the cloud and how you want to configure it. So if you're importing customer data, you need to decide how to store that, whether or how you want to encrypt it. You need to control your own IAM, decide who can have access to your account, and things like that. I won't go into all the examples because I don't want to go and cross out every question, but basically it's in the cloud versus of the cloud.
I love it. Let's bring up the answers and see if we can get rid of some as a result. AM, what do you want to get rid of?
Ooh, what do I want to get rid of? I would get rid of, well, I'll go with operating system patch management because if you are running an operating system on something, typically you're the one responsible for that. But it's not always true, actually, in some of the things. So this is the one that this is the AM tip again. Don't be too clever for your own good, because like when you run a Lambda function, actually, you're not you're not necessarily updating system patch management for the operating system. That's one of the actual reasons why you would use Lambda. But in general, for all the things that you're running on EC2, for example, you have to go and manage this yourself. So I'll get rid of number 2.
Yeah, definitely a customer one. Number 2, Nikki, you want to get rid of one for us?
Yeah, so thinking about Taz's explanation of the cloud versus in the cloud, I'm thinking through when I stand up new infrastructure in AWS, like what are the things I have control over? So looking at number 3, security group configuration. Well, I know every time I stand up an EC2 instance, I have to put a security group on there and I need to configure what IPs are allowed, what ports, what type of traffic, all of that. So because I know I configure that, I'm going to cross that out because AWS doesn't really care if I open it up to the public internet or I open it up just to my IP. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Nikki. Taz, you want to get rid of our last one before revealing the answer?
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off of what Nikki said. You know, I've spent way more time than I would like to trying to do CIDR range math in my head, trying to figure out how to divide things up. And so I know that that is something that I have to do myself. So assigning IP address ranges to VPC subnets, that's going to be something that the user has full control over. So
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Obviously, 1, 2, and 3 are all customer. That leaves us with our edge location. So this is where our CloudFront sits. 216 locations around the world, I think. Hopefully got that one right for everyone. And obviously, this means this is our AWS physical infrastructure. Okay, so this is data closer to our customers, providing a faster service. So I would definitely say that's AWS. Let's reveal our answer, make sure all of us are correct. And of course, it is number 4. Yay! Team effort. I love the team effort. So I've got one more question, AM. I think it's only fair we give it to Nikki, our fabulous guest for today, your guest, piggybacked on the back of me. So Nikki, if it's all right with you, I'd love you to round us out with our final question of the day.
Of course.
Yay, automation. What a way to end. So question number 9, which AWS service enables infrastructure to be automatically deployed in a repeatable manner?
Repeatable manner. Classic phrase of AWS certification questions.
Absolutely.
So going through these, I'm going to be very honest. I've never heard of AWS Artifact. So I'm going to skip that one for a second. Amazon EC2 image builder. So being able to build AMIs, Amazon machine images. AWS code deploy and AWS CloudFormation. Well, this is a tricky one because I think, I don't know much about Artifact, but for image builder and code deploy, these are all dealing with deployments. So it's not like we can really rule out one from that perspective. I think the question here is infrastructure and repeatable. So knowing about CloudFormation and using that a lot, I know CloudFormation is a tool to essentially write infrastructure as code so that you can check it into source control, you can have a Reddit audit trail and a record of changes, and you can automatically deploy it in a repeatable manner. So right now that's looking good for me. So realistically, I'm okay not knowing much about AWS Artifact because I feel confident that I know what CloudFormation is and this applies. I think for the other two, like, yeah, you can leverage image builders to be able to do automated deployments, but image builders are for images, not for infrastructure. So that doesn't really make sense in this context. And then code deploy, you could use CloudFormation with code deploy, but code deploy is more your pipelines to be able to orchestrate the deployments. Whereas CloudFormation is actually dealing with what infrastructure do I want to stamp out. So even though code deploy, kind of related to what the question is asking, at the heart of it, the key here is infrastructure. So I'm going to go with AWS Cloud Formation.
Yeah, awesome. I love that you're showing everyone that you don't need to know everything. You don't need to know exactly what every answer is or means or how it does or doesn't relate. You can really still jump in and derive our answer. Taz, I am in agreement with the last question.
I'm in full agreement. Cloud Formation all the way.
I trust Nikki implicitly for anything at this point, actually.
Me too. I'm dying to go back and actually watch this episode from the start when I was sleeping, just to hear more from Nikki. Of course, our last answer is CloudFormation, and another great tip, definitely look up what you can on CloudFormation. And actually, maybe we can pop a little article about AWS Artifact in the chat as well to round us out, AM.
Absolutely.
Team, thank you so much for having me on Howdy Partner today. This has been an absolute blast to get CQ out there in a different way. Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. You're welcome to come back at any point, I think. What do you think, Taz?
I think next time she doesn't even need to tell us that she's coming. She should just 8 a.m. her time, just dial in.
Pop up.
Just pop in.
Yeah, just find the Chime ID and you're good to go. Yeah, that's all you need.
Oh, this is risky. I love this. Pretty much just got full permissions there from Taz. So, and anytime Nikki's on again, I would love to come on. So,
perfect.
All right, so I think it's probably time to wrap up Howdy Partner. After we have wrapped up the show within the show, we had that wonderful CQ respite. That was amazing. So if you've never seen CQ before, go watch CQ. It's on this same channel. Do you have a time period that you always broadcast during, MJ?
We do, and we broke our rules for Howdy Partner this week. So for Australian Eastern Standard Time, we air at 10 a.m. on Wednesdays weekly, which converts to 5 p.m. PDT on Tuesdays. Check it out.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, we not only is MJ the wonderful host of CQ, she's also a time traveler to us. It's Thursday.
I'm in your future. I'm in Thursday over here.
It's just Wednesday for me. I don't know how this works. Nikki, thank you so much for joining us as well. Is there anything you want to leave us with on the Pariveda side or on, I think bold idea, hitting that again, letting people know to go donate and or participate in bold idea. Please plug anything, everything you want to.
Yeah, so Pariveda Solutions, the company I'm with, it's really great to be the first consulting partner on Howdy Partners, so really appreciate the invite. Check out Pariveda Solutions. Really enjoyed working with the company, and it's been great being able to learn a bunch of new things, have a company support me in my AWS certification journey, and being able to build cool things in AWS. Bold Ideas, AM mentioned, a local nonprofit in Dallas. One of the good news things about COVID is that it's enabled Bold Idea to spread across the US. So we typically do in-person sessions. Since that's not really possible right now, we're doing virtual sessions with the kids. So we've expanded volunteer opportunities. So if you're interested in mentoring, or if you have a child, school-age children that are interested in learning more about coding, I think right now we're doing Python and websites, so hitting kind of different aspects, all project-based learning. Check it out, boldidea.org. And then the last thing with Pariveda, I think Taz put the website in the chat, but we're having an upcoming webinar around modern data enterprise. So all things data and all the cool things we do in the cloud, data lakes, analytics, machine learning, and just getting more involved in that space. So if you're interested in any of that, feel free to check it out. And yeah, that's it for me. I really appreciate coming on. This was super fun. Loved hanging out with y'all. MJ, it was great having you join from all the way across the world. Beauty of technology. So
Well, all the three of us are in Texas, and MJ is in, Australia, which is like Texas, kind of. I'd say it's pretty similar.
I heard you get pretty big spiders where you are 2 a.m. So it's like we're in the exact same place.
That's right. And so as we do on Howdy Partner, we leave with a little bit of a Southern United States exit or sign off. Y'all come back now.
Interesting.
Here, is what we say. Y'all come back now. You hear. So if everybody, Taz, is there anything you wanna say before we go? I know we've got some upcoming episodes on Howdy Partner. Come check it out. You want to tell people where to watch?
Yeah, absolutely. So Howdy Partner, we broadcast Mondays and Wednesdays, 2 to 4 p.m. Pacific. And so come back. We have so many cool partners coming up here. I know one that I'm excited to be working with here in the future is NLX. They're a chatbot platform. So they're going to show us how you can make some pretty cool chatbots. And so definitely tune into that one. And, there are a ton of other partners as well. So Mondays and Wednesdays, 2 to 4 p.m.
All right. I'll count us down. And on 3, not after 3, but on 3. Y'all come back now, you hear? Sound good? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Y'all come back now.
Y'all come back now.
Yeah.
I totally messed that up. See you later. Bye.
See ya, everyone.
Bye.